Soft rains hid her tears. She walked along the empty road with only her shadow as company. Above her, the sky was the colour of concrete, hard and unyielding. The promised sun of the morning had not appeared, leaving the little girl cold and damp. She carried no umbrella, no raincoat, only a broken shoe. The green leafy trees that lined the road shook in the light morning wind. Without a sidewalk, the sides of the road had turned to mud in the rains. As the girl walked, she left mismatched footprints behind her, the wet mud squelching underneath her feet. Around her were open fields that seemed to stretch endlessly across the flat land. The only buildings were a few grey boxes on the horizon, their lights twinkling in the distance. At the end of the barren road was a bus stop, a simple metal box covered in peeling green paint. On top of it there was a glowing white sign that flicked occasionally. It read, "End of the line." Inside of the faded green metal box was a set of wooden benches and a newspaper rack that only held the moth-bitten scraps of the past. But it was dry, and so the little girl hurried inside, eager to get out of the rain. But there was one other thing in the bus stop, something she'd missed. It lurched out of the shadowy corner where it had been sleeping, hidden from view. It was an alien. The little girl gasped and turned to leave. However, being confronted with the idea of going back out into the rain, she turned around and sat down on the other side of the bus stop, as far from the alien as possible. The creature's head craned forward on its long segmented neck to look her in the eyes. Her two wide brown eyes stared back at the alien's three green ones. It tilted its head in what the little girl assumed was puzzlement. It reached toward its neck with one of its long scaled arms, touching a necklace of metal beads wrapped tightly around its neck. A translation chain, thought the girl. At the touch of its fingers, the beads came to life, intricate lines of white light tracing their way around each bead in the chain. A voice, slow and heavy as stone, rolled forth from the chain. "Girl, what is your name?" The girl looked down at her feet, then at the three piercing eyes of the alien, then back at her feet. In a quiet, wavering voice, she said, "It's Sophie Emerson." "Well, hello then, Sophie. What brings one so young so very far? Is it not quite dreadful weather for a walk?" The girl began to turn over her broken shoe in her hands, over and over again. I got lost," Sophie said at last. The alien slid itself across the wooden bench, further into the pale early morning light. It wore dark blue worker's overalls over its legs and torso. Its scaled arms had too many joints. Its mouth was like a crab, built out of many intricate moving plates and mandibles. Sophie stiffened, but she did not run. She had seen aliens before in the servants' quarters, but she'd never been this close to one. The alien's complicated mouth parts moved, and the translation chain glowed again. "I see. Would you tell me then why you got lost?" Sophie looked at her shoes and did not answer. The rain outside beat down harder, hitting the roof of the bus stop like a drum. A faint stream of rainwater reached down the wall through some hole in the roof, grasping at the scraps of faded newspaper that filled the rack. Sophie could feel the rough concrete under her feet, the way the wet mud poured under her toes. "You know, I'm lost too." Sophie looked up. "You are?" "Yes, you see." The alien gestured at its clothing and at the chain. "I work the fields around here from sun-up till sundown." "Oh, I didn't realize." Sophie looked out at the concrete sky. "But hasn't the sun already risen then?" The alien tilted its head out to look as well. "Well, do you see the sun?" "No, but it's supposed to be up there." The wind began to pick up, whipping the trees and grasses into a frenzy, their leaves and stalks bending under the pressure. "A lot of things are supposed to be." The trickle of water began to drip into the newspaper stand, staining the moth-bitten contents. The ink began to run off the page under the onslaught. The face of a newly elected mayor, who by now had served his term and long since died, began to spill black tears. A travel pamphlet advertising, "Earth, Jewel of Humanity, travel now at reduced cost," began to fall apart. Its ancient pages turned to the consistency of oatmeal by the rain. What's your name? I'm sorry for not asking sooner," Sophie said. "Eldex is what you can call me, little one." "That's a nice name." "It is not my name, little one." "Well then, what is it? It sure seems like a name." "It is a name, just not mine. It's the name of my race. We are the Eldex." Sophie's brow furrowed at this, and she began to turn the broken shoe in her hands faster. "Do you not have names, then?" The alien looked out past Sophie, over the flat fields and toward the horizon. The rain beat down incessantly, turning into a fast staccato on the metal roof of the bus stop. Then the alien turned his head down, toward his feet, before returning to look at the horizon. "Not anymore. Not for a long time." Sophie knew that tone. It was the tone adults used when they didn't want any more questions. Sophie was a curious girl, though. "Why did you stop, then?" "You wouldn't want to know." The alien did not look at her, continuing to stare at the horizon. "But I do want to know. Won't you tell me? Please?" The alien spun abruptly, turning to face Sophie. Rising to its full height, the creature looked down on her. Surprised at the sudden movement, Sophie flinched. The alien leaned in, its long head twisting down on its segmented neck to look Sophie in the eye. Two warm brown eyes stared back at three small green ones. Sophie started to inch back into the corner. The eyes scared her. They were different, not how they had looked a moment ago. They were filled with something, some kind of intensity that she did not understand. They pierced her, looked through her, saw something she did not see. They judged her, held her there before the altar, and were her judge, jury, and executioner. And they were about to announce her sentence when the alien broke its stare, shaking itself free and returning to stare at the horizon. Sophie realized she had been gripping the broken shoe so hard her fingers hurt. She let go of it, leaving it to soak in the shallow puddle around her feet. "I'm sorry," the alien said at last, its voice thicker and heavier than usual. It did not look at her. Sophie stayed silent, afraid she'd anger it again. "It is unfair to judge you by your parents' sins." Sophie opened her mouth to ask a question and then promptly shut it again. "You ask me what my name is? Fine. Look, here it is." The alien reached for its neck and grabbed the translation chain tightly wound around it. Selecting the largest of the steel beads that made up the chain, the alien turned it around. On the bead was inscribed a number etched into the cold steel, 17743030. Sophie stared in shock as dim memories of school teachers prattling on about taking people's names away flashed before her wide eyes. For a reason she could not explain, she felt guilt and shame. She hesitated, lips quivering, before in a fragile voice she said, Did we do that?" "Yes." Sophie looked shocked. That's horrible. Humans, we took away your names. Why?" The alien gave what could be a shrug. "Why does anyone do anything? Because they can. Because it made them feel powerful. Because they hated us. Who knows? It's just the way things are." Sophie felt sick. The alien continued. "You know, it's been so long. Not a single one of my people who still live has a name. A real name and not a human number. They make us work these fields." The alien gestured vaguely around itself with his arms. "Your people must have thought our labor was cheaper than you, humans. They keep us separated, you know. I haven't seen my family in years. Maybe they're dead. The alien paused for a moment. Maybe that would be a blessing. Sophie felt numb, like someone had reached inside her and pulled something out. The world she had thought existed didn't. It was all a lie. I didn't know. I'm sorry. I never realized. The alien turned to look back at Sophie, and this time the 3 green eyes were calm and warm. It's okay, Sophie. You didn't know. You had no part in it. Sophie nodded. The horribleness of the world made her eyes water, and she blinked them away. The alien turned back to look out at the horizon, and Sophie followed suit. The rain fell, the grass swayed with the wind, and they sat like that for a while under the concrete sky. Time passed, and the unseen sun made its slow invisible dance across the sky. In time, the alien broke the quiet stillness. Sophie, why did you actually get lost? Now it was Sophie's turn to look away from the alien's eyes and out toward the horizon. My parents. They fight and argue for hours. Sometimes they make me choose between them, and then when I do, they get mad and yell at me. Sophie paused, thinking about all the things she didn't want to think about. The rain began to lessen, its incessant drumbeat slowing to a rumbling dirge. Sometimes I can't sleep because of the yelling. They always yell, and when I ask them to be quiet, they punish me. How do they punish you? Sophie seemed shocked the alien cared. No one had ever cared before. They put me outside and lock the doors. They say, if I want quiet, there's plenty outside. Sometimes they forget about me, forgot to unlock the door, and I sleep outside. The alien stayed silent and listened. I was playing and I broke a vase. It was an accident, you know, but I was afraid. I didn't want to sleep outside or, you know. Sophie wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. A faint sniffle could be heard. I didn't want them to find out, so I ran away. The alien took a moment to process this. I'm sorry, Sophie. I wish I could help. But you know they'll find you, right? It's only a matter of time. I know, but I like it here without them. I'm sure you do, but you can't stay here. A sudden, terrifying thought entered Sophie's head. You won't tell them, right? If they found out? The alien seemed amused at the prospect. As if a human parent would listen to an Eldex. Don't worry, Sophie. Your secret is safe with me. Do you promise? Sophie asked, her voice thick with emotion. I promise. Thank you. Thank you so much. And Sophie began to cry, long sobbing cries that racked her tiny body. She hadn't cried in a long time. Her father had slapped her the last time she'd cried. The tears flowed freely, running down her cheeks in rivers of emotion, before dripping off her chin. The alien awkwardly reached out its hand and placed it on Sophie's neck. There. It will be okay, Sophie. Sophie, between sobs, said, But I'm not supposed to cry. The alien turned Sophie's face toward it with its hand and looked her in the eye. Who said you were crying? All I see are raindrops. Sophie managed a small smile and nodded. The rain began to lessen, its steady beat slowly dying away. Soon there was quiet, but for the chirping of birds and the buzzing of insects. Worms emerged from the moist soil, wiggling with life. The road was covered in shallow puddles, reflecting the concrete sky overhead. In time the bus came, out from the city, its headlights blazing like the absent sun. It was like a long metal snake, rolling across the land, scattering the bugs and birds, and splashing through all the puddles. It rolled up to the bus stop and its doors opened, and light spilled out. Sophie had no money, so the alien paid her fee. It watched her ascend the steps to the bus, one foot still bare, the broken shoe having been left in the bus stop. The alien waved, and Sophie waved back, and then the doors closed. The bus turned around and drove off, back toward the city. The alien sat in the bus stop a while longer, enjoying the peace. In time, it too left, walking back down that desolate road to the walled compound it called a home.